Today was the penultimate round of Norway Chess, and there was high drama with lots of twists and turns and big surprises. I've picked as my play of the day Viswanathan Anand against John Ludwig Hammer. Anand won against Radyabov in the previous round with a beautiful game, beautiful, crushing game, and he's really on the up. John Ludwig Hammer from Norway is at the bottom of the tournament table. So Anand saw today as his big chance to try and strike and get back to the top of the table. Let's see how things went. Anand with the white pieces, d4. And Hammer, well, credit to him, he's still playing full-blooded fighting chess, even though he's the back marker. He's played the Grunfeld, a very sharp opening variation indeed, and of course an opening that Anand himself specialises in. What did Anand have up his sleeve? Well, this actually, it's quite a modest system, or seemingly modest, playing the bishop to d2. The idea is that after e4, when the knight captures on c3, the bishop is able to match the bishop on g7. Hammer, well, at this moment, was playing fairly quickly, but it was clear that Anand had decided during this game to play as fast as possible. Hammer has been having trouble with time pressure, and Anand clearly, right from the off, was determined to play on that. So here we go. This position's been seen before. The Grunfeld is such a complex opening. There are so many ways of playing with both colours actually, but we have a fairly traditional Grunfeld type position here, where white has an advanced d pawn, so claiming central space. Black decides here to hit out at the centre straight away. Now, if white develops normally, black will simply take and get some play on the e file and actually blockade this pawn, and I think black's absolutely fine there. Anand plays uncompromisingly. He pushed the pawn to d6. Now that's a real risk, because that pawn, you can see, is slightly cut off from the other pawns, and in fact Hammer now kind of emphasised that. It can't be protected by another pawn, so it could easily be rounded up if white doesn't play actively here. So Anand, in this position, played h4, outrageous, before developing any of his other pieces, just goes on the attack straight away, wanting to try to open up the king side. Hammer developed bishop e6, and now, well, you could play h5, but then black would simply close with g5, and it's possible. But instead, Anand brought out a knight to h3. Perhaps wanting to come into g5 to get the bishop. Perhaps wanting just to push with h5, and now that g5 is no longer possible. I mean, it did occur to me that black could just sort of sit tight with f6, and I suppose the only justification of this move is to play f4, which is outrageous. I mean, white's pawn structure is an utter wreck, but he does have some attack. But instead, Hammer again sort of met fire with fire. He didn't back down, and credit to him for doing this. He took that pawn on h4, which is incredibly risky, opening up the h-file. Anand didn't bother defending the e-pawn. He just castled queenside, queen takes e4. So now Anand is 2 pawns down, and his king isn't particularly safe in this position. It's got these split pawns in front of it. I mean, and he was playing these moves so quickly. It's incredible. Now bishop d3. I mean, if you attack with knight g5, I suppose black could just play queen f4 and give back a pawn and trade queens, and that's probably not bad. And it is possible for white to play like that. But instead, Anand played uncompromisingly with bishop d3, just going for the attack. And he didn't even bother defending this pawn. He just played knight g5. So opening up the h-file, allowing Hammer to take on a2. I mean, this is incredible. This is now pawn number 3 that he's sacrificed. Now, if Anand plays for an ending here, then, well, at the moment he's 3 pawns down. He can probably recover some pawns, but even so, that's not the way you want to play this position if you've got this far. So he avoided the queen exchange with queen e3, still leaving his king desperately insecure, but, well, he calculated enough and still moving so quickly. All the pressure was on Hammer here. Hammer gave a couple of checks. The king can find some kind of security here. I think Black's problem here is that there are so many different moves he can try. You know, maybe rook d8, maybe knight to d7, maybe knight to c6, or do you try and close the king's side? I mean, how do you actually play this? So many different alternatives, and very difficult to determine which is best. Hammer played bishop f5, which certainly looks reasonable, just to tie white down to defending the bishop here. And again, lots of possibilities for Black. Develop the knight, maybe h5. It turns out probably developing a knight is best, although White still has, you know, an outrageous attack here with knight h7. But okay, if Black defends very carefully, he might be okay. Instead, Hammer played rook d8, which looks like a decent move, hitting the d-pawn opposite White's king, but he missed a terrifying blow here. A terrible blow. Knight takes f7. And Anand was moving so quickly, after a couple of minutes, he played this move. The knight has to be taken. There's too much on here. The knight, the pawn, checks available, the h file is open. Hammer took, and now queen takes e5, a relatively quiet follow-up move. Now, what's the point? Well, the first thing is that rook takes pawn check is threatened with mate. If h5 to block the h file, then queen e7 and queen takes rook check. So that's two really serious threats, rook h7 and queen e7. So actually Black's next move is forced. Rook takes pawn check. Oh, I should mention king g8 as well, but that loses in fairly traditional style like this, and so on. And well, you win with checks actually. Okay, so actually rook takes d6 is forced. Now Anand is the exchange up, but his king is still insecure, and you'll see that rook d8 is threatened. Nasty. Anand took on h7 and now king g8. But has this made the situation worse? Rook d8 still threatened, king takes rook now threatened. At this moment, well, Anand, I think, was just kind of checking the details. What I was looking at this position, I was thinking, well, is White just winning with queen f6? This comes so close. At first I thought this was completely killing, with the idea, obviously, mate is threatened, and if king takes rook, then there's rook h1 and rook h8 mate. But in fact, Black saves himself by the skin of his teeth. In fact, not only saves himself, Black is actually winning outrageously in this position. Suddenly, the queen comes back into play. These are only moves, but it looks like Black is actually winning here. This is the trickiest variation. And now rook d3, incredibly, seems to win. And this is the main variation. And now, although Black has not many pieces left, this is actually winning. It's outrageous, because in this position, when the king goes back to g1, you take the rook with check. And when the king bounces up, well, you can take on h7, for example, and Black is going to be winning that position. Incredible. So what can White play here? Two threats, king takes rook and rook d8. Anand had it all worked out. After 9 minutes thought, that's an age for him, he came up with rook d7. Absolutely brilliant move, and the only move that wins in this position. Now the point is that if bishop takes rook, you take on g6. Black's king is totally exposed. Now of course White has a draw, but in fact with perpetual check, but there is a win with rook h1. Black's queen doesn't have any checks to the king. Rook h8 is threatened. Now there's almost an extraordinary save here for black. Bishop h3 preventing the rook check. In fact, white still wins with rook takes bishop. Now the bishop move has opened up the d file, but in fact white's king actually escapes here, and well, these checks are pretty useless. White's king escapes and then it's going to be mate. So it comes really close. So back to rook d7. Hammer tried this move, and now queen f6, threatening mate. And now there's no alternative for black. You have to take that rook. And now we're back in exactly that variation, with the difference that black's rook is on e8 and not a8. It makes a slight difference here because black can play rook check, but the white king can actually escape. For example, queen takes bishop. There are no more sensible checks for the queen. Hammer tried knight d4. I should mention that by this point he was down to his final few minutes. In fact, when he played rook d8, he was under severe time pressure. Anand had something like 50 minutes time advantage on Hammer. He was playing so quickly. Knight d4 check was played, but this can just be taken. And again, the king is escaping. I mean, you can play a few more checks. Queen d2, let me see, queen d2, that one is going to avoid the checks pretty soon. Queen d3, f3. So Hammer went into this endgame, but this is utterly lost. The king came over to stop the pawns, and then it was just a case of the rook cleaning up with the pawns. This is how the game finished for all you completists. King takes pawn on b5 threatened, and now it's not possible to prevent king takes pawn, because if the bishop comes back to d7, then rook e7 check wins the bishop. This was vintage Vishy. I remember when he first came to England at the start of his chess career, he played lots of tournaments in England, and I remember him just crushing his opponents in similar fashion, where he'd play all his moves in 10 minutes and his opponent would be losing on time after 2 hours. Quite extraordinary. And Anand's speed of calculation is something else. And also his uncompromising play, that's what we saw here. And he seems to be really finding a rhythm now. Now he has lost one game in this tournament to Nakamura, but actually he's defeated Topalov and Radyabov in similar fashion to this game, where he just gets this rolling initiative and his opponents just crack under the pressure. Fantastic stuff. I also thought he was very unlucky not to beat Karyakin. It was a beautiful strategic game. So, strange things happened today. Karyakin lost to Svidler, outplayed by Svidler, and Carlsen lost to Wang Hao, outplayed in endgame. In fact, perhaps Carlsen could have done better at drawing the rook endgame. He might have to brush up on those, dare I say it, before his World Championship match. So, going into the final round, Karyakin still in the lead with 5.5, Carlsen on 5, Anand on 5, just behind. So it's all down to the final round. Karyakin probably has the easiest pairing, as he has the white pieces against Topalov. Carlsen plays black against Aronian. Anand plays black against Wang Hao. But anything can happen. Thanks for watching.